Kerry and Brieanna, welcome to the Daily Social Distancing Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are a lot of misconceptions around foster care. I don't even know what I don't know about foster care. We see portrayals on television. We have ideas of who a foster child is. We have an idea of who a foster family is. But I think there are a lot of gaps between what people know and what people need to know about foster care, especially in America. So, Kerry, just give us a breakdown of what you do in the foster care system and what you're trying to achieve in the world of fostering.
So CASA NYC, Court-Appointed Special Advocates of New York City, we are one of a network of nearly 1,000 CASA programs nationally. We operate in New York City. Each one is independently operated, but we leverage citizen volunteers to advocate for children and youth in foster care. So judges appoint us to the cases of kids in foster care when a judge is concerned that a child maybe isn't getting their needs met by the system, or they're at risk of being stuck in the system too long, or they're aging out of the foster care system. In New York, that's at 21, without having what they need to live independently successfully. So CASA NYC recruits and trains and supervises volunteers to do that advocacy work, because our volunteers are able to really spend a lot more time, provide one-on-one attention to each child, whereas the caseworkers and the lawyers, even, the ones who work really hard, and they do, but they just couldn't possibly, spend as much time in a day on every child on their caseload.
Right. It seems like a really complicated issue because, you're trying to fulfill multiple jobs in a person's life. Housing, education, income, preparedness for the world. Brieanna, you are actually from the system. You lived your life as a foster child and grew up out of the foster care system and went on to work as a chef. Tell me a little bit about the fostering world. Like, what are some misconceptions that people have about you or your life that you wish they would understand?
That teens are stuck in their ways. When I say teens are stuck in their ways, I think about times where I was an older kid in foster care.
Yeah.
And it was hard for them to find me a foster home. I was sitting there waiting for a new foster home and feeling like, no one's going to be there. No one's going to come get me. People think that, kids are coming from these places and just be put in these homes and they're going to be happy. We're not going to be happy, because even though we were traumatized in those places or hurt in those places, those are the places that we know. So you took me from my family and you put me into a system with a bunch of strangers and you expect me to behave. And then you diagnose me with behaviors because I act out,
Right.
so.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you end up in the foster care system? Because I know everyone has a different story and it determines a lot of how their life rolls out.
Okay, so I first got into foster care when I was 14 going on 15. My mom was put out a PINS warrant. Basically, my mom was like, she's not listening to me. She's been running away. It's like basically giving your parent the opportunity to be like, well, my kid is acting up. Here's my kid. I don't want to be, involved anymore. I was involved in a lot of different things as a kid. I was in a gang. I was running away, and my mom, she wasn't seeing that from any of that from me. So one day the cops knocked on my door, and I remember feeling like I'm in trouble for something else, when really it was like she said, they're here for you. Get your stuff. You have to go. And I remember feeling that day like she had given up on me in a sense. From foster care, my life was just 50 different homes, like a lack of connections to foster parents because of my sexuality, because, some people are in it for the wrong things. They're in it for the money, or they're in it because they feel like they're doing something good. They can talk about it themselves and say, I'm doing something good. But really, when they look on the inside of the surface, it's not really, it's not all the way what it should be.
Kerry, on your side, you're always fighting to improve the foster care system. You're always fighting against the odds because it is an imperfect system, because it is born from an imperfect world. Parents who are separated from their kids, either forcefully or because they've chosen to be. Kids who struggle to connect with families, either because they've got issues from beforehand, because the families are not good at developing those connections. What are the ways you think the foster care system can be improved? And what are the difficulties in improving the system?
I think one of the things that's most important for people to understand is that of the more than 400,000 kids in foster care in New York City. Children come into foster care because of allegations of abuse or neglect against their parents. The vast majority of those cases are not physical abuse or sexual abuse, they're neglect. 75% nationally and closer to 85% in New York City are neglect cases. And that neglect is often very closely tied to deep poverty, trauma, things like domestic violence and substance abuse and mental illness that are related to trauma and that are really related to structural inequities and structural racism. And I think, you know, in New York City, we're on the right track because we've reduced the foster care census to 8,000 from close to 50,000 in the early 90s by providing more and more preventive services, by spending more, you know, effort going into homes and helping families resolve the problems and resolve the issues in their homes rather than just jumping to take those kids away. But we still have a long way to go. But it's really difficult because the system has a hard time recruiting foster parents.
Right, I can imagine.
Especially foster parents who have really the means, the capacity, the time, and the energy to spend really taking care of kids who've experienced trauma. They've always experienced trauma. So the behavioral issues Bree is talking about, you know, come from someplace. It's not because she's a bad person. And, you know, she has been able to, I think, with her incredible resilience and also the support of the parents who had ultimately adopted her and organizations that she's been able to really connect to. So it's really about helping. I think the most important thing we can do is make sure those young people, if they can't be reunited with their parents, which happens the majority of the time, but if they can't be, they need to be connected to permanent supports, to permanent family members, to adoption, and it's really hard for older kids to get adopted, or to, you know, lifelong supports. Sometimes a family member, it doesn't matter who it is, it's somebody who's there for them for the long term.
Your type of story could so often end in tragedy, and yet here you are, as you said, working as a chef. I know, you know, coronavirus has taken away your job, including millions of others, but you are in this position where you took your love of food and you became a chef. You know, you're a spoken word poet now. You have built a life for yourself from, you know, the many pieces that were dealt to you. Is there a reason that you think you got to where you got to? Were there any positives from the foster care system that helped you maybe, or do you think you got there despite the foster care system?
It's because of the foster care system, because a lot of the times you get put in situations where you can't change anything. So my mindset is am I going to stay mad about it? Am I going to stay stagnant? Or am I going to be better than the situation that I'm going through? And a lot of the times I find myself being resilient, even when it hurts, you know? For me, I think my biggest thing, I go by this quote, is called, failure isn't falling down, it's staying down. So remember to pick yourself up. So I just try to pick myself up. And cooking makes me happy. I can make people smile through food. You know, poetry helps me teach people what my story is or what I've been through in life, you know? And it helps me connect to others. So I think for me, the biggest thing has been picking myself up and inspiring others. For me, that's something, it makes me happy because I know that I'm doing something, I'm teaching someone something, you know, I'm giving someone something good to eat, you know. You know.
Yeah, no, it really is amazing to get to where you've gotten to, considering what you've lived through. Thank you so much for your time today, Kerry. Thank you, Brieanna, both. And I hope things get better. You know, maybe we'll have another conversation one day where we go like, hey, we managed to fix a few of those issues. Thank you for the time.
Thank you
for having us.